The Indianapolis Colts have decided to lay out a mandate for Jonathan Taylor. Next Tuesday would be the date if they're going to make the trade. Obviously, there's a lot of talk around fielding trades. 6 multiple teams have reached out. We'll talk about all of that and so much more inside this live stream in the No Horsing Around Wednesday edition. To do that, Stephen Burton, Adam Reuter, a guy who's not been on the show, but I'm pretty familiar with him. Back in the day, started podcasting. Me and this guy had a lot of fun talking Colts football, so I thought it'd be really cool to have him on tonight and just talk about a little bit of football, just everything in general. As always, guys, we'll let you control the comments. Feel free to light us up, and we'll go that way. Starting off up top, though, Adam, just your initial thoughts on the Jonathan Taylor saga, whatever the hell you want to call it, man. I mean, it's just been kind of a circus, really. But that being said, just your initial thoughts where we're at current events right now with Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, it's definitely disappointing. Not what you want to deal with going into the season, having a big distraction like this. I think most people kind of saw it coming a little bit when you draft a running back like that. You kind of know once you approach the end of that rookie contract, you kind of know that that's something that you're going to have to deal with. But you were hoping to at least get through the contract year and then kind of deal with it from there. But definitely disappointing. But, I think that when a lot of people saw he was, given permission to seek a trade, I think a lot of people were like, well, that's it. That's over. And I think there's still some hope. It doesn't look good right now, especially with the deadline and everything. But, I still think there's some hope that, he ends up coming back after maybe taking a look at the market and kind of realizing that, hey, it's not maybe as much as he was maybe his agent was promising him. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, man. Steven, haven't had a chance to really talk on air since the mandate kind of came out in that hard line, I guess next Tuesday, because they have to make a decision one way or the other, right? He's going to have to go. He's either going to have to come off PUP, stay on PUP, miss the first 4 weeks of the season. What do you think, man? I mean, the hard line, I kind of like it, if I'm being honest with you. I like it because it presents a little bit of urgency on all parties involved when it comes to that. Get all your best deals in, get all the best trades. We'll take the best package, or we'll just simply walk away and we'll say no. We'll say no, thank you, and he'll still be a Colt when it's all said and done next Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, I like the hard deadline, right? I do like that because it promotes a finality a little bit. Although, what was it, Stephen Holder who was saying, just because they don't reach it by then, technically they could still be fielding and talking out offers.
Yeah,
I think the most interesting part for me is kind of the number of teams, right? 6, and then we've heard 2 have actually presented an offer. Is kind of the steady report that the 2 of them there. And my first thought was always that I thought they're floating this out there, and I still kind of feel this way, right? Me and you have talked about this, Zach, that they're floating this out there so he sees, hey, man, this is what it's actually like out on them streets, right? Like no one else wants to – they're not going to – it's not just us. And I got to thinking today going, man, I saw someone tweet it and I thought about it afterwards going, the more you have, the more that first-round pick for him could be actually a possibility because the more shooters you have, obviously it drives the price up.
Yeah.
So it's getting interesting to hear, and then now you're hearing specific teams too, because like what we've heard, the 2 I've heard, I think, and y'all tell me, Adam, you tell me too. I've heard Dolphins and I've heard Bears. Those are the only 2 that I've heard, but I don't know if that's the only 2 who have actually presented offers.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard 6 teams. We don't know the 6 teams. I think I'm pretty confident to say that the Dolphins have done the most inquiring up until this point. But that being said, I mean, really, there's so many hurdles to overcome when it comes to this trade. Because first of all, before you even get to the trade compensation, will a team be willing to extend him and pay him the money that he wants? Because the deal, in my opinion, stops right then and there, right? Like if he's not going to get the money, and it clearly seems it is about the money, then there's really no trade to be talked about. Once you get past that initial deal and you get that money worked out, I would think that this would be an accelerated process. If you get a team on board, let's just use for hypothetical, the Miami Dolphins decide, hey, I want to be a part of this. I want this guy to be a part of our future. We're going to offer him a 3 or 4 year extension. Well, if they do that, you'd have to think if they're willing to go that far that they're going to give up the compensation that it takes to go ahead and get their guy, because that's a pretty big investment to go out there and make, upwards of 13, 14, 15 million dollars a year. I just gotta say that I have a real hard time believing in my mind when it all settles and all the dust kind of, goes back down to where it's supposed to be. I just don't see him getting 13, 14, 15 million dollars a year for the next 3 or 4 years. I don't see a team doing that because I don't see a team that has to do that, right? Like, I think that's the big deal for me. Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you pay that much money for him? Because he's not a part of your franchise, and you're trading, picks away from your football team. So you're actually adding this guy at a very expensive price, more than you would pay a typical running back, and you're losing value in the draft next year and maybe the next 2 years. You don't know what's going to happen when it comes to that. So I guess my thoughts are, Adam, for you, how realistic is this? I mean, in your opinion, just as a Colts fan, a football fan in general, how realistic do you think that this even comes to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, as far as it being realistic and if what they're saying is true on the draft compensation and the what he wants average, per year, which I've heard is approaching Christian McCaffrey type money, it's not realistic. So getting a first round pick and him getting that type of money, I just don't see it happening. You could just kind of by process of elimination run through a lot of different teams. And the Dolphins are someone who's probably been one of the stronger ones that we've heard. But it's, the other teams I've also heard are, like the Panthers, the Cowboys. I've kind of heard those thrown out there. Not as much as them making a solid trade offer, but kind of showing interest. And I think at least Jerry shut down a lot of that about, Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
But, he's kind of, said that in the past when they were leaning on Tony Pollard when Zeke was trying to get his extension. So you never know what's going to happen with that. I think they really like Tony Pollard. He's a top 10 running back, hands down. They got Deuce Vaughn, that, rookie from Kansas State, who's looks like he's going to be a really good little player. So, I mean, that wouldn't make sense at all for the Cowboys at all to me. They just got rid of Zeke because of a bloated cap situation. Doesn't matter if they have a ton of cap space now. That wouldn't make any sense at all. But, yeah, if someone does offer the first-round pick, or an equivalent to that, and it's the right partner, I think it'd be silly almost to turn it down. I mean, I know he's Jonathan Taylor, and, of course, there's going to be interest in that. But for someone to offer that up, I think it would be foolish for that team, and it might even be foolish for the Colts to not take a deal like that.
First-round pick, Steven, you got to think a first-round pick it's gonna get done right at that point.
Yeah, I think if somehow it gets to a first-round pick, I think they're just going to do it. I think it'll almost be one of those things where it's like they didn't expect it, and it's there. My question, too, is that we hear these two offers, right? Like we hear these players. Part of me wonders if they've already because it's his agent. Like it's his agent and JT who are looking. That if these are presenting offers to the Colts, they've agreed on the money, I think. I don't know if it's that record-setting money. If he truly wants out of Indy as bad as he has kind of implied, right? It may not take record-setting money for him to leave. He may just want to be gone. But like to hear that two people have presented solid offers that we've heard, right? That have actually made those offers. I sit there and I do wonder. I think they've probably talked about the extension portion of it, what that's going to look like. Now we need to come up with a package. Now I made a joke earlier and I said that I made it on Twitter or X and said that when they came out and said 6 teams have presented interest and 2 have presented offers, my response is, well, obviously they weren't good enough because then it would be done. Like if it was a first-round pick or the money, everything lined up, we wouldn't hear, 2 teams have. It would be done. He would be going somewhere. So there's something missing from it. I don't know. I mean, if you held me down and you said, do I think that it's going to happen? Do I think he's going to leave? Man, I am really 50-50 right now. I was way heavier on I didn't think he'd go anywhere. I thought it was all kind of just fluff. I mean, even now you hear Peter King saying he still thinks the Colts are going to kick him a little money for this year, and he's not going to go anywhere. So, like, you hear him, and then you got all this other – I truly don't know. And I know someone had it in the chat. I know somebody had mentioned the Rams. I think our friend Rashad, who's over at SI, he debunked that. He said that I think they had preliminary interest, but there was no offer made.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be hard for the Rams. They don't really have much to offer in terms of trade compensation. My God, I mean, they trade every draft pick that they have. When it comes to that, though, I guess where I stand on it all is, there's so many. I just think he's going to end up not getting traded. I think that it's just that simple for me. I just don't think he's going to get traded. I just don't think a team's going to be willing to give up what it would take financially and as far as compensation wise. So I think ultimately this time next week, I think that Jonathan Taylor is an Indianapolis Colt. And as much as that makes him angry or disappointed or whatever he wants to do, maybe they keep him on the PUP list. Maybe he says, no way, I'm not playing for you. Just keep me on the PUP. That's fine. But I still think he's an Indianapolis Colt. I'll tell you this. Let's just turn it over to this kind of topic because I've been thinking about this for the last couple of weeks. Just conversations on and off of streams and podcasts and all of that. I think I probably like the idea of trading Jonathan Taylor for a player more than draft picks. And here's why. When you talk about running backs, you very rarely are you ever going to get real value and compensation back for that running back. I don't think anybody's going to give up a 1 for Jonathan Taylor because they don't have to give up a 1. I'm not sure they're even going to give up a 2, which in my opinion sucks to be Chris Ballard, sucks to be the Colts. But I don't know how much they're going to be willing to give up for a D-value position like the running back. But I do like the idea of going out and trading him for a player who's an actual high-level starter, young, multiple years still left on his contract. What would your thoughts be about that, Adam, if we just did like more of like a player swap versus the traditional, hey, we're going to get a group of picks? Just your thoughts on that, Adam.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. It'd probably be something that a lot of people haven't seen coming as much. But if it's the right player and if it's the right position, that's something you got to entertain. The one thing I had brought up in the past, or I'd heard brought up, was kind of the inconsistency with Chris Ballard being willing to pay players at certain positions that aren't, like guard and weak side linebacker, for example. But why not running back? So I think that if you kind of look at it and there was someone on the table that was a really talented wide receiver or, a good player at another skill position like that, that's something that should be entertained. But at the same time, you always have to look at then why are they trading that young wide receiver, that skill position player? There's always a reason why they're willing to jettison them off. And that's another frustrating thing with as far as, trade value goes. Whenever you have a player that comes out that's outspoken, obviously other teams know that, they know he wants out. So that damages a lot of your trade value. I know a lot of Indianapolis fans have seen that with other local sports teams as well and had to deal with that. But yeah, that's something you always want to keep all the options on the table. Draft compensation does kind of seem to be the bar right now. But anything could happen. So I mean, you're right. They don't have to trade him. I think a lot of people kind of looked at that news, like I mentioned before, and just said, "Oh, that's it. He's out of town." And I don't think that's the case. Technically, he really doesn't have to go anywhere for the next 3 years. If you want to get technical, you could, which would be doing him, not doing him a solid at all. But technically, you could franchise tag him for the next 2 years. So Colts have a lot of leverage in that regard, especially in the fact that, realistically, they're not Super Bowl contenders this year. They're probably not deep playoff run contenders this year. So, I mean, in that regard, they can kind of sit back. They're not just a good running back away from making it. So I'd sit tight if I was the Colts personally.
Yeah, Steve, before we throw it over here, just want to take a quick second to thank each and every person who's already hopped in the chat. Nomad, as always, Sarah, Paul. You guys have been really, really cool, lighting us up today. Thank you so much for being a part of this. If you haven't joined this No Horsing Around family, feel free to tap in. Hit that bell for alerts and subscribe. Join this family. We do live streams every single Wednesday throughout the season, as well as instant reactions, game previews. We try our best. We had Kent Sterling on today. The usuals, Kevin Bowen, Bob Kravitz, Zach Kiefer, all of the guys, George Bremer. We'll have everybody on, James Boyd, as the season goes on. Tap in, be a part of this No Horsing Around family. And if you're wanting to do something a little bit different and you're feeling like, hey, I'm going to roll the dice, head over to WagerWire. That is the sponsor of this live stream tonight. And make sure that you maybe put a little bit of money on Anthony Richardson, Offensive Rookie of the Year, like I have done in the past. I think that's probably your best chance if you want to bet on any futures with the Indianapolis Colts this year. That's maybe the best bet. That being said, Steven, thoughts on trading for a player as opposed to draft picks? Which side are you on?
Can I have both?
No, you cannot.
Right? Can I not get the one because I don't think that's going to happen, right? Like we've talked about that. Can I get a couple of, like a 3 and a 4 and a player? And then the question for me would become, who's the player, right? Who are we targeting? You see a lot on Twitter and stuff like that of like specific teams and getting a running back. I don't think that's the play. I think if they were going for a player, you're going for a position of need, right? Like I think I drew a lot of criticism because when they first let him seek the trade, we all know the value they placed on him. It was a first-round value, right? They were looking for a high-end back. They wanted all that. And so my thing was if you're a team and you're coming here, and this is where we know the Colts, I'm not saying I would do this, right? But we know the Colts have a high value on him, and the Bills come. Stephon Diggs is disgruntled. There you go. Like and that's not me saying that necessarily. Yeah. That's the value that the Colts place on Jonathan Taylor. Like you're not going to give me a second or your fourth wide receiver for Jonathan Taylor. That's not what they're going to look for. If they're looking for a player swap, they're looking for those big name guys. If they're going to do that, in a perfect world, like I said, I think I'd take a little bit of both. If I had to pick one or the other, I think it depends a lot on the player. I'm really interested to know because what's leaked so far for him, right, is that both of these offers are kind of a combo of picks and players, is what we've heard. Like you've heard the Eagles have been really aggressive too. I just want to know who the players. Like I know that won't leak because it's just going to explode those teams that you're trying to get rid of these players. But what are we talking about when you hear going to be really aggressive? What are they willing to give up? What are they willing to do? In the end, like you said, like I think if it escalates to a point, I think the Colts will pull the trigger. I think they'll. If it gets to what they want. I just don't know. Like you guys said, I don't know if it gets to what they want. And you said it best too. They don't have to do anything. Not for this year, not for next year. And if they want to do him dirty, the year after. Like they don't have to do anything. They hold all the cards. I think that's what makes this so compelling too, though, right? Like honestly, it is such bad timing for him. It's just like it's if you taught a class in how to not do this, this would be the example of how to not do this. Yeah. It's just such poor timing.
Well, I mean, and if you think about it, Steven, all of these running backs are all taking this stance, and not one single running back has won this negotiation.
They've all folded.
They've all either folded, they're coming back, or they signed for a lesser deal than what they were originally asking for. Really, the last man standing, honestly, is Jonathan Taylor. I mean, if you think about it, because he demanded a trade, and he's going to get granted that wish. Now, I know that Irsay came out and said, no, he's not going to be traded now. He's not going to be traded in October. I think ultimately Chris Ballard said, look, if he doesn't want to be here, we got to get something for this player. But beyond that, I mean, Adam, how would you feel if you're Shane Steichen, your first year as a head coach, you just drafted a rookie quarterback, and every damn practice, the very first question's asked, where's Jonathan Taylor? Is he healthy? When's he going to play? I mean, wouldn't that have to be just mentally taxing on you as a first time, as any head coach really, but especially as a head coach in his first year, when he should be concentrating on this football team, the players who are at practice, the players who are playing on the field? And hell, he had to expect Jonathan Taylor was going to be his running back this year.
Oh, for sure. It's got to be frustrating. It makes sense why he kind of I did see a headline that he was kind of subtly pushing the comments saying these are for, you can ask Chris about the that situation, and it makes sense. I'd be frustrated too, but I've also heard, I guess, getting into the type of style that he runs, I've also heard that, running the offense the way he doesn't really fit to what Jonathan Taylor exactly does. Not getting too much into the X's and O's of it, but I think I wouldn't put too much weight on that. Jonathan Taylor's a great player, and Shane Steichen's smart enough to make him work in any offense. But yeah, it's certainly got to be frustrating. But you guys are right. I mean, no one has really won in this. There's been small compromises from guys, kicking Saquon a little bit extra money, but really not much. Not nearly enough to where, knowing what Jonathan Taylor is asking for, it's just not really a realistic thing at all. But, just going, like we were saying, through the teams before, I've heard another team is the Panthers, and the Panthers really didn't make sense to me at all beyond the Frank Reich connection. It's like they just traded away the highest paid running back last year, got a bunch of draft picks for him. And you look at what they got for him, it was like a second, third, and a fourth, something like that. Yeah. That just wouldn't make a lot of sense to me. But for Shane Steichen, I want to be able to have that solid running, more than solid running back for Anthony Richardson and a rookie quarterback. And it doesn't really help that the running game hasn't looked all that strong in the preseason either.
No, it has not.
But, if you go back at it at the end of the day, for example, Bijan Robinson, drafted in the first round this year, I personally would have been a little upset if my team would have drafted a running back that high. I know he's going to be a great player, fantasy football and everything. But the reality is the Falcons are probably going to go 7-11 this year still, no matter how good of a season he has. Yeah. That's running backs are a luxury, and a lot of people take that personally. And I know Jonathan Taylor has definitely taken that personally, but they're not an absolute building block to success. And I think if you look at a lot of the teams that have won Super Bowls over the last few years, having an all-world running back hasn't been the key to that success per se.
Yeah, I mean, Adam made a great point, Stephen, where, no matter how dominant of a year he had a couple years back, we still finished 9-8. We don't make the playoffs. I mean, not just a good year, an historically great year for our franchise, and still was not able to even, catapult us over the edge. And he was a big reason we won a lot of those football games, and there's no question about that. But that being said, still not that valuable of a player in his position. And it does suck, man. I mean, this is not the 90s where running backs were the guys, the Emmitt Smith era where, that was the thing to have. You had to have a star running back. Well, it's more running back by committee, or even if you do have a star, you're only going to plan on having him there for 5, 6, 7 years. And then, just the nature of the business, obviously running backs come and go. You take that draft pick. If you do those, do some sort of a trade compensation, and next year, second, third round again, here you are again, you draft a running back and you've got him for the next 4 or 5 years, and life goes on in the NFL. Shane Steichen, your thoughts, Stephen, just how frustrating, would you be if you're Shane Steichen every single solitary day having to go out there and answer really the one question about the one player who's not been there for the whole training camp versus the other players?
Yeah, I think he's definitely frustrated. I give him massive credit though, right? Like he kind of, from the moment he got introduced as the head coach, he kind of laid that out there that, hey man, I just want to talk ball. Like I just want to coach. I'm not going to, and he's been very short, right? Like he's not the go on a soliloquy like Frank Reich. He's not been that way. And so I think that lends well to this. I think he's handled it really well. I think he's frustrated because all he wants to do is just coach. He doesn't want to deal with all this drama of it. But granted, like what coach really does outside of like the ones that just love that, right? Which are very rare. So, I mean, I think he's done a great job handling it. I think he has not focused on it. I think it's interesting. when you see pictures, right? And we were at camp and we saw Jonathan Taylor, right?
Yeah.
Like he walked right past me and you when we were standing on the sidelines. I find it interesting that you see a lot of pictures. I'm not saying like conspiracy theory or anything like that. I think he's not focused on it like Steichen. You see him, he is attached to Anthony Richardson, at the hip all the time. Like you see, like I think we've seen some stuff where he's gone over and he's talked to him, but it is what it is. Like you've always said, Ballard, it wasn't Ballard, it was Tomlin who said, I want volunteers, not hostages. He's focused on who's in the building, which he has to be because we were a 4-win team last year, right? Like by no means were we a great team last year. Yeah. You've got to focus. So, I mean, that's going to be the interesting thing for me watching. And you mentioned one of the Panthers popping up too. I was going to say this, the one trade I've heard player-to-player swap, I was like, that makes sense a little bit. It requires you signing somebody, but a player of need for a player of need. I actually saw someone float out there, the Commanders, and a swap with Chase Young and Jonathan Taylor. It's like I might not say no to that if you can come to a deal with Chase Young, because that's a position of need for the Colts.
Yeah, I mean that. You definitely need a swing there. I mean, and that's probably something, if you're going to go player for player, that's probably something that would be enticing to me if I'm Chris Ballard. And I think you might get a lot more value out of that. Now, here's the bad part of that. Chase Young comes and he balls out. Next year, he's going to get for real paid, and he is in the middle of the contract. Now, you would have the franchise tag because you'd still own the rights as far as that goes. But that is, yeah, I mean, that would be something to think about. What would you feel about Chase Young? An even swap, Chase Young, Jonathan Taylor. What say you, Rude?
Oh, man.
I got you on that one.
Yeah, put your GM cap on right now. I mean, you got 10 seconds to consider this trade right now. Are the deals off the table for Adam Reuter, the GM of this podcast? Anyways, you taking it or are you passing on that and saying no, thank you?
Man, my gut reaction says talented edge rusher with insane upside. I think I would just do it in a gut reaction. I think I'd have to, and you could be all hard ass all you want as Chris Ballard and saying, kind of like what I was saying before, that you don't have to trade him and everything. But when you have a position, a player at that position that's so important, like having an edge rusher, that's just such a vital part of a team. You pair him out there with some talented guys, like Kwity Paye and whatnot. Those are the type of swings that you need to take and have a chance on saying, hey, dude, we can find another running back somewhere else. I mean, you can.
Yeah, man. I'd love to hear it. Derek, Cody in the chat, either one of you guys, yes or no, are you taking Jonathan Taylor for Chase Young straight up? We're just throwing hypotheticals out. We're having fun.
Hey, Derek's going to jump on that, man.
Oh,
Ohio State.
Derek's been waiting to answer a question like this for about the last week anyway.
He's just
so
like,
we'll get something
with that
out.
Ohio State.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with Adam. I think you made a great point. I mean, man, that is such a position of value. And if you trade for a guy like that and you hit on Chase Young and he can be healthy, that's a big deal, right? Like it's a lot harder to find a Chase Young at the level that Chase Young, we all know that he could be at. It's a lot harder to find that than it is to go out and find a quality running back. As far as that goes, Angie pipes in and she says she's the general manager and she's keeping Jonathan. Damn, Angie, I don't want you to be the general manager, but that's cool. You get your opinion matters on here as far as that goes. Oh, and he says also, Derek says no. This is the most anti-Ohio State thing that he has ever said on this podcast, and we won't let him forget that next time he hops on.
There you go. No, he said no, but he added a little tease.
He's rebuttaling. He wants Chase Young in a conditional third for Jonathan Taylor. Well, I'll tell you what, if you can make that happen,
you could be the new GM.
You could possibly be the new GM. Let's get Corey up here. All the usuals. I'm ready to watch AR tomorrow night and see the growth from his first preseason game to the Bears joint practice and the third preseason game. Beautifully let out. Let's segue into that. we have a quarterback who is going to actually play tomorrow night as opposed to the second game. I am still not completely happy about that situation. You can ask my wife. Full transparency, I was a piece of crap for the whole first quarter. I was not a very happy person, but anyways, doesn't matter. That being said, are you guys excited?
Can I tell him something? Can I tell him something, Zach?
Yeah.
Like a little behind the curtain. He's not kidding. I talked to him after the game, and normally after a game, when we talk, especially if he's there, there's a lot. We'll talk for a while, and it was literally like somebody had kicked his dog. He was he texted me later to apologize because he was in such a bad mood.
Hey, we've had a few of those games back in the 2019 season, I remember, but this a little bit different, obviously. Yeah.
That sucked, but whatever. You know what I mean? Good thing I'm a season ticket holder. Good thing I'm going to get, it looks like 9 chances this year to watch Anthony Richardson run on the field. That being said, Anthony Richardson, what are you guys looking for? Stephen, we'll start with you, then we'll come back down to Adam. Just what are you looking for in this game, versus the very first game? Obviously growth, but how much playing time would you expect him to play? Would you hope that he plays? And just what are you looking for in general from AR?
So I want to see, like, in a perfect world, you go backwards in time when the preseason was 4 games. Like, I want to see from him, I want to see the footwork right. I want to see the passes coming down a little bit, and I want to see how he reads the defense. I want to see how he reacts to this D-line. Like you talked about with Kent earlier today, this is a really, really good D-line. Like, this is a really good defense. I want to see how he does with that. But as far as like playing time, I'm weird, man. I want to, but I don't want to. I would love to see him play. It's gonna sound funny because I don't think you could do this, right? I'd love to see him play into the second half only because I want to see halftime. I want to see how he handles halftime adjustments. It's never going to happen. He's probably going to play about a quarter, but I would love to see that adjustment. How do you handle going in, sitting, breathing, making the adjustments, and then coming back out of the tunnel? And you used to see that back in the day. You don't see that now. I would probably look for him. I think he's going to get a quarter. I think the moment you pull the starting O-line, you pull AR. You don't leave him in there at all with the backups. And we just kind of see what he does. I'm really excited to just see how he has looked, because to hear Steichen talk about why he didn't play that second one, man, I want to see the progress. I want to see what he looks like in game, because progress had to have been there in practice, right? Like to not play him when he needs, everyone in the world knows he needs snaps, and you took that away. You didn't play him. Man, I want to see. I want to see it.
Yeah. Rude, where are you at with it? How much playing time? Just what are you looking for in general? Obviously, you want him to play well. You want to see him to come out there and respond. But just what would you like to see as a fan of this football team? Thoughts on just Anthony Richardson marching out there against the Eagles tomorrow night?
Yeah, I mean, I think about a quarter as far as duration goes is probably, what he's going to end up playing, what I think he probably should. Maybe I lean towards more of it being a little bit of a scaredy cat and a conservative with our franchise quarterback and everything. But first and foremost, you want to see every single player come away, with no injuries or anything like that. That's an obvious observation. But another thing that I would kind of, if I was Shane Steichen, he's a rookie quarterback. You're already, it's kind of like golf. He's probably got a million different thoughts in his head going in, and he's trying to focus on the main priorities and whatnot. But I would kind of emphasize them to, always play your game, but try to stay in the pocket. Just go through your reads, and if it's not there, you don't have to be Superman. It's a preseason game. Again, I don't know how much of that, they're probably going to tell him to play his game and do his thing, but try to stick to the script, go through your reads and everything. And, you don't need to be lowering your shoulder, blowing guys over. We saw that in week 1. That was awesome. Let's save that for the regular season and everything, and, go home safely. But, love to see him, make some plays and, put up a good lead before he hands the keys to Minshew.
Yeah, I think it's fluid for me, guys. I think, you want to see him go out there and have some positives and possibly end on a positive note, a lot like he did in the first game when he played against the Bills. Now, Matt Gay misses a 28-yard field goal, but he led his team all the way down the field before you had that hold call from Farrell Brown, and then you had the field goal missed. He still had a positive drive, and he responded back. That's the biggest thing for any rookie, in my opinion. How do they respond to negative plays on the field? Because there's going to be negative plays this year. And if anybody, is not ready for that with a rookie quarterback, it's going to be a long season for you, man. I mean, because he's going to be up and down. We've been saying for 2 weeks, get on this roller coaster, and you're not coming off for 17 weeks. It's going to be all over the place. But he's going to do some things this year that probably blow you away. And he's going to do some things where you're looking at, the person beside you and you're saying, what the hell was that? Like it didn't make any sense. But that's the maturation process of a rookie quarterback, man. They got to learn. I don't care who you are. Peyton Manning threw tons of interceptions in his rookie season. I don't think anybody at all is worried about that now. I think he had a Hall of Fame career, and it all turned out just great. So playing time, I think, is the ultimate goal. Want to transition over to just our cornerback position group because, guys, we're pretty light at cornerback. We're young at cornerback. We don't have I don't have really any veteran presence other than Kenny Moore back there, and he's more of a slot nickel corner. Are you guys concerned about our cornerback group as the season goes along? Just with so many rookies and so much inexperience, what's the level of concern for you, Steven, with our cornerbacks this year?
I start with, yep, there's concern. That's the first response, right? Yep. We've talked about it, me and you, and we've talked about it on this show. A lot of it is they're going to take lumps this year. And I think that's the idea. I think this is one of those situations where Ballard's going, these are my guys. I feel like they need to grow into the positions. And that's what's going to happen. They're going to get beat. The secondary is going to be a glaring weakness, I think, for our defense. It would stun me if it wasn't. But the question is, where does it start and where does it end? How does Juju look at the end of the season? How does Darius look at the end of the season? Are they look better than they were? Yeah, and I think the only way that they're going to get that is they're going to play them. I mean, I don't think at this point they're going to go out and get anybody. We've talked about it. I think I kind of feel like, maybe after cuts next week, maybe they go and they find some veteran leadership. I mean, it's highly concerning that coming out of the Philly joint practice, we saw A.J. Brown just torching Kenny Moore. like our best corner, right? Just torching him.
To be fair, though, he does that to a lot of other cornerbacks.
He does do that to a lot of people.
And I get your point. I'm not taking anything away from what you said, and you're exactly right, Steven. But A.J. Brown has a tendency to do that to many corners in the NFL at any level. But you're right, man. I mean, it's scary. It's scary to see how young and how inexperienced we are. And I think you made a great point, Steven. I just think that they're going to roll with it for better or worse this year. They really are. Adam, thoughts on cornerback room, concerns? How do you feel about the cornerback room in general?
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a let the young guys play type of approach to it.
Yeah.
Another good thing at least is Gus Bradley seems like he does a pretty good job of mixing up the defense and generating pressure, and sometimes that's the best secondary you can have to help them out is having a good pass rush. So that's one thing you can always bank on, seeing a big jump from Dio Dangbo and maybe some of the other couple rookie guys on the D line. I think that's probably one of the best things you can jump for. But I really like the corners that they did draft. I mean, there was all three of the guys that they drafted, even going back Darius Rush and Jalen Jones. Those guys had some middle round grades on them, which means they had some upside at some point. And I think it was Jalen Jones that we got for a steal in like the 6th or 7th round, I think. But those guys are probably going to be more special teams guys. But yeah, you're going to let the young guys play. They're going to figure it out. But Gus Bradley's defense, I think he's going to do some things to help those guys out. So overall, we'll see how it turns out. But, it's definitely. I don't want to say I'm not concerned, but still,
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
For sure, for sure. Guys in the chat, thank you all so much for being on here. Paul, your Harpoon, Nomad, Corey Lampkins, Sarah Angie. I mean, you guys have all been awesome today. We're interested over under. Vegas has set the odds 6.5 wins for the Indianapolis Colts. You guys get the chat going over under. We'll probably circle back and talk about that in a second. Want to get to the offensive line because there's a real concern there, guys. Once you get past that first initial 5, when you start having injuries, and injuries is, I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, it's inevitable. You can't play a full season and not have an offensive lineman get hurt. That being said, I can't hardly wrap my head around the fact that they haven't went out to do anything to improve the offensive line when your whole team building philosophy is basically built in the trenches, right? Like that just seems so odd to me. Now, everybody who listens to this podcast knows all full well I have a love-hate relationship with Chris Ballard. I will be honest about that. Probably a little more hate than love here in the last couple of years. If I'm being fair, I think he's done some great things, but I also think in some instances, just a little too bullheaded, man. I mean, really, with this offensive line, 2 years in a row, you've basically not done much at all at the offensive line. You're saying, okay, I'm just comfortable with what we got, which tells me he believes the coaching was the reason they weren't any good at the offensive line last year versus the talent. I might tend to agree slightly, but then I think I also disagree as well because we could use an upgrade. And I just don't know why you wouldn't go out there and sign an offensive lineman, a veteran offensive lineman, just to have peace of mind, if nothing else. I'll start with you, Adam. Just your thoughts on the offensive line. You got any concerns or you feel pretty good with where we're at?
No, I think there's definitely concerns. That was one of my main checklist items for free agency was just pay big money to a right guard. Just that was kind of what I wanted to see. And in return, he did pretty much absolutely nothing. So that was frustrating to see. I don't think that Will Fries is, the answer, nor is Danny Pinter so I get that there was a pretty highly undrafted guy. I think the Cathedral guy from Alabama.
Yeah.
There's kind of hope that he can develop into that role too. But yeah, I never really understood that. It almost comes off as such an arrogant thing to see how bad that O-line was and then just come back and not do anything with it. It's almost with the approach of, the laughable approach of, oh, they were so bad last year, I guess they can't get much worse, and it's like that's not a way to build a winning football team personally. But I think there also might be some truth to that. There's a lot of talented guys on the, Quentin had a down year, Ryan Kelly had a down year. I think Ryman's on the up. And I did like the Blake Freeland pick as a backup swing option. I think there's even a possibility you could put that big guy in a right guard and he could move some people around. So not all bad things, but I do think there is a little bit of truth to them that being so bad this year that there's, got to be some, improvement this year. And I think there will be. Yeah.
Steven, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree that I think they're going to be okay. Depth is obviously a concern. We've talked about it. I'm surprised as somebody who preaches they're going to always go for the trenches that he's not. Kind of just brought in competition a little bit, especially since last season we kind of saw what that did. Like you crowned Pryor. He's like, hey, he's just got the job. And you just kind of gave jobs and it fell through and it didn't work out. You had no backup plan. It was bad all season. But even last season, kind of in the mud and the muck as we went through it, me and you, Zach, we talked too. Something felt off. Like you can't go from 3 all-pros to being that bad. Like you wonder if 10 years down the line, we're going to hear something was going on that year. I think they're going to have a bounce back season. I think you're right, Zach, where you said, I think that they put a lot on coaching. I know as fans, we did. We were stunned that he never got fired. This dresser never got fired. I like what I've seen in Tony Soprano Jr. He's a very in-your-face guy, and I think that goes a long way with offensive linemen and that offensive line group. I think you have to You know, you have to be in your face. I feel like you have
Sure.
to demand that, and he seems to have done that. That being said, one injury and there's going to be an issue probably. So you just hope that, you know, maybe we go backwards a little bit to 2 years ago when we had like that historic health where
Yeah.
nobody was getting hurt. It's a concern, but at the same time, I see them having a bounce back season. I don't think they're going all the way back to what we saw 2-3 years ago. But there's just no way in my mind they're going to be as bad as they were last year, because they've also not shown it in anything we've seen. Last year in the preseason, we saw it right away, right from the jump in the first preseason game and the first joint practice. You saw it and you're like, this is going to be a problem. And we've not seen that this offseason. So I think they're going to be better.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, Adam made a great point. Ryman, I think, is going to be solid at left tackle. Will Fries is an area of concern for me. That being said, he's hurt right now, so we're actually at a backup at that position. Anyways, I think you could probably roll with a veteran interior offensive lineman and a veteran tackle, if I'm being honest with you, just to have you know, the ability and the peace of mind as the attrition. Hey Matt, how you doing? As the season goes along. I mean, I think this offensive line for me is a concern, not week 1, but week 4, 5, 6, 10, 12. That's when it becomes a concern, because it's inevitable that someone's going to get hurt, miss a play, miss a week, miss a month. You know, you just don't know when it comes to that. And I don't know if I feel comfortable with any of these backups. If you've watched any of these preseason games, it's not been very good. You know, when we get into that second unit, they've just not been what we expected as far as that goes. One to flip over here, kind of last topic before we finish this up. We're going to go about 10 more minutes, guys, and you guys hit us up with the comments. We'll try to get through some of these things here as we go. Josh Downs, I'm not gonna go on this live stream and not at least mention Josh Downs. Stephen Burton fan club. He started the Josh Downs fan club, and I think he's the admin and everything of that. But that being said, Downs looks great so far. Hard to judge because it's preseason and, you know, things are a little bit different than they're going to be in the regular season. But I believe, and I know Steven believes, so we're curious what you believe, Adam. I think the Colts might have hit on something here with Josh Downs.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it has a lot of people like myself wondering, you know, where has that type of player been, you know, the past few years in the Chris Ballard era, you know, like it seems like every wide receiver he drafted kind of had to be that same exact, you know, like Michael Pittman prototype. And, you know, I'm glad that, you know, we're able to finally get that type of player in there that can work inside and you know, move across the lines like that. You know, they've missed that for quite some time now. So I'm really excited about him. I know they brought in Isaiah McKenzie too, just in case he wasn't ready, but the kid looks ready. You know, he looks like he'll be able to handle the workload right off the bat. So super excited to see where he can take us working over the middle.
Steven, you got a couple people, man, that's joining the fan
There's plenty of space.
They're all jumping in. They're all coming in on the Josh Downs fans club. I have to agree with both of you guys when it comes to him, though. He does look like he's got an extra gear. And I think his biggest talent is he just knows how to get open. We just have not really traditionally, Chris Ballard has not went for that type of wide receiver. And I'm so glad that he did this year. And maybe that's a little bit of a Shane Steichen influence. I don't know, you know, but I welcome it. I think he's probably already beaten out Isaiah McKenzie for the majority of the snaps. Now, I don't think Steichen's just going to come out and just give it to him that way. But I think when you look at late in games and you look at all of that stuff, man, I'll be honest with you. I think he looks like your third best wide receiver option right now. And I don't know why you wouldn't just roll with him when you're coming to Josh Downs. It should be interesting. Want to go around the table because we promised earlier. Going to put you on the spot, but we're just going to do it because we always do this. Over or under 6.5 wins. Stephen Burton, time to just go right at it, man. What do you think?
So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with my gut. I'm gonna go over. As I've looked through, I've always felt, and 6.5 is a great number because I've always felt 6 to 7 I've never predicted more than that. I've not really. I also don't think that they're going to be just. There are some really bad teams, like really bad teams this year, and I don't think that we're one of them. I think there's a lot of talent that's still on the roster. I don't think you're in Arizona. I think the Texans are a dumpster fire. I think those ones. I think those are the teams where you look at like that. I don't see them. I think Bob Kravitz put out. He's predicting like that we're picking in the top 3.
Yeah.
I don't think I see that. I think that there's some wins there. I don't think the Titans are as good as they are. You just look through it. I'm gonna go I'm gonna go over. I really like the number 6, but you took that out of it for me.
Yeah.
So
Vegas took it out. I actually didn't.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over. I've been really consistent that I think they're gonna win that. Probably 6 to 7 games this year.
Okay. What say you, Adam?
Yeah, I usually don't consider myself much of an optimist as much as I'd like to be, but I'm taking the over as well. I kind of go through the schedule every year and see, hey, that's realistic. This is realistic. And I was kind of right there at that 7 and 8 win mark, and saying that, hey, that's with the entire roster makeup, and I think at the time too, I was kind of factoring in, even if Gardner Minshew's starting too. So, I don't know how much that would affect it going either way. I think if anything, that's going to give us a more higher upside, honestly. But that's kind of the mark I'm at right now. Like Steven said, there's a lot of bad football teams out there. So, I mean, there's going to be a few that they can probably kick around, and our roster is going to come through, and we'll be fine. So I'm taking the over on it.
Adam Reuter going with the over. Adam, you wearing a Carson Wentz shirt right now, man?
Oh no, that is not Carson Wentz. No.
I was gonna say, get your life together right now, man.
I'm having flashbacks to last week with my Eric.
I had to give him a hard time. He had an Eric Ebron shirt on last week, and I told him he had to burn that as soon as the podcast was over. Not gonna dodge the question, guys. Over, under 6.5 wins. I'm going to say 7 wins. So I guess I'm going to go over. I'm going to go over, and I'm going to say Jonathan Taylor is going to be our running back this year. That's just where I'm at. I know that's a little bit hot takey, but that's the way I feel. I think that he will be our running back. I don't think we're going to get the package that we want, and I don't think he's going to get the deal that he wants. I'll be honest with you. I actually hope I'm wrong about that. I think I want this distraction to be gone. I don't want a player to play for our football team who doesn't want to be here. I hate when players get put in that position as well. But that being said, I just don't think anything ever comes of this. I think ultimately at some point he's going to have to just make a decision for himself. He's going to go out there and he wants to earn the $4.3 million this year. We'll see, man. I mean, we got a couple more comments. Sarah said 7 to 9. I just put them over because I said under. We got an Eric Ebron fan, by the way. Well, that's unfortunate, but and then and then we've got what we got. I think Jonathan asked to finish out his existing contract. Very, very good. Guys, if you haven't had a chance, I know we mentioned it earlier, join this No Horsing Around family. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit those bells. You'll get those live stream alerts as well as everything else as we put out all season long. Thanks, Steve and I kind of scheduling like we've always done. We've kind of committed to 4 podcasts a week, unless there's breaking news, and that may change some things. But we're going to have a pretty good lineup this year. We're excited about the season as we get one more warm up before tomorrow night. That's 8 Eastern here in Indianapolis time against the Philadelphia Eagles. I guess the game's on Amazon Prime, and I'm not sure if they're going to offer it locally or not. But that being said, if you got Amazon Prime, go over there. If not, get one of your friends' email address and sign up for a free trial and watch the game. Anyways, guys, I think that's about enough. I think we've covered it all. This was a pretty good one. We went over the Jonathan Taylor. We obviously covered O-line, cornerback position, Josh Downs, and just some back and forth, over, under wins. This was a good one, a good conversation. And Nomad Brown's he's going to watch it on Amazon Prime. So why don't you guys just follow him over there tomorrow night as we watch the game. We will have the instant reaction for you guys. Steven and I will work out the details on that, but one of us, maybe both of us, will have that instant reaction as always. And Steven, as you always do, man, send us out.
Hey, I normally do like a little fluff before it, right? Like it's like, hey, if whether they trade Jonathan Taylor, it's one of those things, man. It is what it is. I love you. I know Zach loves you. I think Adam loves you. I'm not really sure JT loves us anymore. We're out.
We're out.